Okay, good evening, everybody. How are we all doing? How are we today? And how are we dealing with this emotional roller coaster of being involved in crypto? Good to see everyone here. Yeah, Chris, you kind of started me a little bit there because I was like, you've already commented. You're live about 30 minutes early. Have I got the wrong time or something? But no, you hadn't. Thankfully, you were just keen, which is always good to see, always good to hear. I'm waiting for someone to tell me they can actually hear me. And we actually don't have the microphone problems we had last time. So one, is it loud? Two, is it cutting out? I suppose they're the two big questions. And once we got those sorted, we can jump straight in. All good? Perfect. Okay. We've got quite a lot to get through tonight. As you can imagine, last couple of days have been incredibly interesting for the price of Bitcoin. Price seems to be going down across the board. Altcoins are suffering particularly. And there seems to be one character in sort of being labeled in particular as being the cause of this, and that's Grayscale. So today we're going to investigate whether or not Grayscale is, or are, should I say, the entity that is causing this price to drop. We'll have a look at some others and just try and see, well, where we are and where we sit and how that is affecting not only the overall price of Bitcoin, but where we might be going in the future, and also what's their end game. So, we need to get through that. I also want to touch on a bit of news. I'm really going to try and get through the news as quickly as I can. So I'm not going to get into detail about the articles. The articles are going to go straight into Discord as soon as we finish. But I'm just going to touch on the headlines of each of those. I want to then touch on BTC price. From my point of view, we're going to talk about macro. We're going to talk about it micro. I want to quickly touch on Polkadot because it's something close to my heart. Got plenty of Avenger questions. And then a little bit of time at the end, we're going to go through some of the altcoins because we need to see where they're heading. So I think a lot of people have some shopping lists on those. So without any further ado, let's just jump straight in. Hopefully we are on this one. Let me just see. Perfect. Okay. So Bitcoin price, pretty much as we thought it was going to do. So last week was this green candle here. And we were talking about, I'll go with it now. It's broken through whether or not it would kiss back off that, which it has done, and then it's just fallen away ever since. And obviously, we're going to get into more detail a little bit later on, but I just want to illustrate that that one did actually seem to go as we thought it would. Now, I know a lot of people were thinking it's a flat top compression, it's probably going to break to the upside, and we did have that fake out to the upside, but ultimately, it broke to the downside. Still not a tradable moment. We wanted to wait for that Kobo and then for it to come back down and correct, which actually it went and did. Now, I'll be honest, I'm not in any trades or anything like that. I was just watching from the sidelines. And just waiting to see what would happen. We actually have a look down on the left, which I appreciate you might not be able to see because of my face cam. So let's have a look at it. This is the Dixie, and I've got that on. Perfect. And yeah, we've had a fairly decent rise. It's been continuing now since the start of the year, where we were down at about 100.5. We're now at 103.6. So it's continuing its rise up, which of course is going to hamper risk on assets. Let's close that one down. I think the biggest failure that we've seen, well, certainly out of the big boys, has been Ethereum. So Ethereum bucked the trend. When, the Bitcoin ETFs were announced, Ethereum obviously spiked up. It was a perfect move up, just getting to just over 2,700. But actually, we've seen it drop back down to the bottom of this range. And again, I would like to go through Ethereum and especially Ethereum BTC a little bit later on. But you can see it's fairly obvious here that we've had that correction down and we are sitting on a pretty important level at the moment. We've not really closed below that. We've wicked below, but it's interesting to see how the daily is going to go. 4 hours left. Pretty strong red candle at the moment. But a break of that, we'll have a look at some targets, but I wouldn't be surprised to see the 2,000 level broken. Obviously, it's going to hurt for a lot of boom boys from the Ethereum side of things. Okay, let's just close that one down. Move that. And Casper, well, again, we're going to have a look at Casper. This one has been, it didn't have that huge move up like a lot of altcoins has. It's been consolidating. But again, it's actually below sort of that 10 cents level, which had held for quite some time. Closing below that, we're going to have a look at some targets, but I wouldn't be surprised a bit later on if we start to see a clump around there, maybe around about 8 cents. Actually, potentially some further falling, which we'll go through a little bit later on. I should just say hello to everybody in the chat. Glad you can all hear me. Hey there, Tim. I know you're in Australia, so thanks for tuning in for that. Rich, I will get to your question a little bit later on, if that's okay, because what I want to do is just get straight into the news. Okay, just a few little points here. We've had plenty of fun on this channel about Ledger when they've gone under, when they've had some issues. Well, unfortunately, now it's time for Trezor. I actually have a Trezor. That's where the vast majority of my tokens are locked behind. So this article initially was quite concerning for me. And the article goes on to basically say that anyone that's used the hardware wallet since December of 2021 may have been affected by an incident, as you will, or a hack. Effectively, contact details, emails, etc. have been taken. It's not a breach of the security software itself, but what we have seen off the back of this attack is people are getting emails, phishing emails, sort of claiming to be from Trezor. You know, the old classic, click on this link, you've got a problem, type in your seed phrase, etc. So this is more of a, you know, straight off the back, any of you that do have a Trezor and you start to get an email asking for your seed phrase, I'm telling you now, they will never ask for your seed phrase. There may be an issue. They may bring you aware of that, but they're not going to ask you for a seed phrase. They're not going to give you a link to click in. So please, 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 you see that, you know, even if you just want to double check, just drop it in Discord. I'm sure everybody in there will validate whether or not it is real. But yeah, they did have an attack. I don't know what you want to call it. A breach, data breach potentially is probably the better word, back end of last month. Okay, talking about the latest bad guy in the crypto space, Do Kwon. We know he has been extradited. I actually don't know if he's actually physically been extradited, but we know that he is being extradited at least back to the US to face prosecution and fraud charges. Now, I haven't brought this one up, but just to make you aware that only about 4 or 5 days ago, his trial has been delayed till the 25th of March, so it's going to be in a few months' time. We'll see where that goes. This isn't what this article is about. This is basically just to say that Terraformer Labs, so the owner of Luna, etc., have finally filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. So it says here that they have between 100 and 500 million in estimated assets and liabilities. If you're interested in that, if you happen to have any Luna Classic or any involvement in the Terra network, please have a look at this and see how it may affect you. Jamie's here too. For those of you that don't know, Tim flew all the way from the UK to Australia, not just to meet Jamie, but they met, had a few beers. Hope they had a good time. But yeah, good to see. I don't even know they're still together, and I don't know why I'm telling you this story. But anyway, there we are. Moving on to the next one, the good old SEC. Well, they had egg on their face, didn't they? Not 2 weeks ago, live on this call, we had the old fake news that the ETFs had been approved. Now, the SEC assured us that they would investigate how that data breach had happened and how unauthorized access to their Twitter account had occurred. Now, they were the laughing stock of everybody, not only because they've always said you can only trust information that is from the SEC website. Well, that wasn't true. But not 6 months prior to that, they talked about having two-factor authentication, and it turned out that in that incident, they didn't. Now, they're blaming this on a SIM swap attack. And that's how someone got unallowed, I don't know what I'm looking for, access to their X account, disabled the two-factor authentication because they had the mobile phone number supposed to do that, and were able to go through it. So that's their side of the story. Whether or not that is enough to assuade a lot of senators, etc., in the United States, and congressmen and women who are asking for a full investigation because there is manipulation that came with that tweet. We'll have to wait and see. Unfettered, thank you, love it. Tim's heading north. It was cold in Melbourne. There we go. Okay, I would have thought it'd been summer, but anyway. Jamie's got a bar in Oz. I don't know why we spend so much time talking about Jamie's, because he's a great guy. He owns a bar in Oz. So if you're ever in Melbourne, I don't know what it's called, but check it out. I'm sure he'll accept Bitcoin as payments. Jamie, feel free to advertise the name of your bar, of course. Right. NASDAQ, COB are applying to offer BTC ETF options trading. So, you know, off the back of the spot trading we've got, and we know that we've had futures sometime as well. Well, the next logical step, as they say, is for options to take place. And actually what they're saying is the SEC seem to be dealing and processing this relatively quickly. potentially we might get that for the end of October. October, what am I talking about? February. I don't even know what I'm reading there. So yeah, that's, I mean, okay, putting aside the micro environment we've got at the moment, the very, very short term, downward pressure in price, having another string to institutionals' bows is just another way in which Bitcoin can be traded. I personally think that is a positive thing for bringing in institutional investment into the arena, into the sector, whatever you want to call it. And so, yeah, I think on the back of all of this, negative news about Grayscale potentially dumping the price of Bitcoin, and bearing in mind they are a spot ETF holder themselves, we're still looking for avenues. It's not like institutions have said no to Bitcoin ETFs. Quite the opposite, as we'll go through a little bit later on. And now we're potentially getting other options, pun intended, for that to go through. So there we go. It's called the Rambling Man, just like I am. And then the final bit of news, which we'll touch on later as well, but we've covered Mt. Gox many a time on this channel, and we finally got confirmation from the creditors that the repayments of the 850,000 Bitcoin that were lost and then found from Mt. Gox will be happening soon. Next couple of months, it's believed that we're going to start to see those payments. So, without trying to spoil it, it doesn't necessarily mean to say that they're selling that right now to pay people back. Because remember, when people went through the applications, they could either be paid in BTC, Bitcoin Cash, or just good old-fashioned USD. So, depending on what in each application is made, they may have to sell Bitcoin into other assets to pay those back. But yeah, it seems that they are getting ready to start those repayments, and they could happen as early as the next couple of months. So we shall keep an eye on those. Right, Richard, I'll go back to your question. Thank you for those who have contributed to the poll thus far. It's just a simple one. Where do we think the price of Bitcoin is going? Where do we think it's going to this dump is going to stop? Where is the turnaround? Looking at 38,000, so kind of what we achieved today. Is that going to be it? Somewhere between 35 and 37, 31 and 33, or sub 30K. I'll go for all of those levels a little bit later on, but it's interesting to see where we are at the moment. Most people thinking around, actually it's pretty close. 35 to 37 is in the lead, but 31 to 33 is a close second. Nobody thinks it's going to end now. Okay, well, we'll have a look at that a little bit later on. Right, Richard, let's see if I can answer your question now. Hi, Harry. If the trend was to change and stocks broke down, for example, and BTC follows it usually do, what would be your sell up and get out level? Or are you willing to hold on for potentially years, even if they're still in the red? Right, okay, so Bitcoin, I mean, that's an interesting one. So my average purchase price on Bitcoin is £19,000, which I don't know what the exchange rate is at the moment, but I think it's somewhere around about $22,000. Although with the way I need to check what the exchange rate is. So I'm not sure where would go. Probably from the personal pot, I would look to sell that. I'd like to try and find some opportunity. I'm not willing to sell at the moment. I don't really necessarily see the opportunity. The problem is the closer we get to my buying level, we really are talking about a majoring bottom. Capo's pretty much right if we get down to there, and that's kind of like, am I just selling at the bottom? So it may just be that I'm in it now. We're so close to the halving. I'm going to just ride this one out. In terms of the altcoins I have, most of them are staked, so that's difficult as well. Those staking periods are anywhere from 2 days to 28 days. So by the time you unlock those and be able to sell them, have you kind of missed the bottom? Again, I take Polkadot as a prime example, buying that back in November 22 all the way through 2023. I just feel like I'd probably hold on to it and just see where it goes. Maybe some of the more newer altcoins I'd look to sort of sell out of, but I don't really have a level. A lot of that will be dictated on where the price of Bitcoin is going. What I have been able to get out of, like Tau, etc., I have done already, which you guys know about. I'm not back in on that. But, as an example, I sold a bit of my Casper, I still kept some of that. I've got things like HBAR and a few others, which I'm more just looking to kind of like add to as the price goes down. And I'm just accepting DCA levels. We're going to talk about the psychology of that a little bit later on. But hopefully that one helps. We'll also talk about the 4-year cycle not playing out this time. So just interested, staying open-minded in case it doesn't. Yeah, there's people talking about this, I know, left transitioning, sort of earlier cycle movements, which I've tried to cover a couple of times if you've sort of followed the thumbnails. And there certainly is evidence that maybe we are a little bit ahead of steam. I think a lot will do on whether or not this correction is a decent size correction. It's currently sitting around about 20%, so it's not to be sniffed at. But if we do get to that 30%, particularly if it's this side of the halvening, then maybe we do have a case. Because there's a lot of evidence, and I've said this many times before. Let me just get a chart up. I know there's a lot of drawings on this, but there's a lot of evidence, once I can find it, and I've said this before, that this was the actual cycle top. A lot of indicators kind of suggested, you know, where you talk about RSIs, stochastic RSIs, whether you want to talk about pi cycles, whether you want to talk about just on-chain analysis as a whole, a lot of it points to this being the top. So the April-May 2021. And then effectively what happened is on higher timeframes, a lot of those indicators drastically cooled off and did not get anywhere near the similar kind of peaks during November. And so what one could argue is this was just a sort of a dead cat bounce that just for a day went higher than the April price. Now, that's, you know, it's kind of hearsay because ultimately the all-time high was in November, and that ties in with a lot of other theories that suggest that they do seem to happen towards the end of the Q4 of the all-time high year. So, you know, two sides for that to go. But this pump here up to April, and had that have played out, would fit with that everything moving slightly to the left, and it's no longer sort of 2 years, 18 months after the halvening. It's more like 18 months as the maximum after the halvening. And what we were saying, well, I can get my cursor correct, is a lot of this action, and there's a lot of stuff on this, I'll just try and hide it for now, I think it's probably the best way. A lot of this price action was going a bit faster than we would have expected, which may be suggesting that we were heading towards the parabolic run. I wouldn't say that we were in it, even if we are left transitioned. I think that's still, you know, the jury's still out. It's still something I'm going to monitor, but I also have seen a lot of people talking about that, particularly on crypto Twitter. And I suppose time will tell. But those indicators that gave us the indication last time that it may have been in April, I assure you I'll be watching out for those. And if they're starting to suggest that's the case, it may be an opportunity to at least take some profit, if not everything off the table. We'll have to wait and see. Okay. I think what we'll do, we'll talk about the Grayscale side of things, because there are a couple of other news articles within that. We'll get that one out of the way. I'll put my 2 cents on it. Love to hear anyone's feedback themselves. And then we'll get into some price action and where everything's kind of looking like it's going on that. So let's just bring this up. Drink. Okay, so Grayscale. Now, I'm not here to explain exactly what Grayscale does. I will try and give you a 30-second, which will no doubt be a 2-minute dit on it. But you've got to remember that, you know, before 2 weeks ago, the only real show in town for institutional investors to, you know, get their hands on, not quite, Bitcoin was through the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust. Okay, and effectively what happened there was you would approach Grayscale with however much Bitcoin you would want to buy. They would buy that Bitcoin on your behalf, effectively hold it in a trust for you, and then they would issue an equivalent amount of shares which you held on to. And that, I'll use the word roughly, correlated with the price of Bitcoin. It didn't, which I'll go on to in a moment. Now, this was, you know, useful for institutional investors, serious investors, because, you know, they are used to holding stocks. You know, they understand the principle behind the stocks and how that works. So it was kind of turning cryptocurrency into a stock, and it certainly had some benefits. Now, it had an advantage and a disadvantage in that what you would find is that the price of the share, so not the BTC, the price of the share would either be higher or lower. So it'd be offered at a discount or a premium to the actual price of BTC. And so when it was tracking under it, you could buy the shares for effectively less than you would if you were to buy the outright asset. And we've talked about that before. You know, we've seen in the depths of the bear market, so there's been almost a 40%, potentially even bigger than 40% discount than buying actual BTC itself. So there's definitely some benefits if you can time that right. And conversely, back when the bull runs were happening, institutions really wanted to get in it. You know, people were paying premiums for the shares, because what I should have said, and this is why it's not going to take 30 seconds, is that there was a primary and a secondary market. So yes, you could buy the shares directly from Grayscale, but people could also sell their shares. So that's effectively how it worked. If anyone knows it any better than that, then absolutely, I might not have got that 100% correct. But everything kind of changed, because now the Grayscale is a spot ETF, and as they so proudly put, the world's largest Bitcoin ETF, with an asterisk, by asset under management. And let's not kid anyone here. Grayscale is the whale when it comes to Bitcoin holdings. So you think Michael Saylor has 150,000 Bitcoins and everyone's clapping him and MicroStrategy on the back. Well, up until a week ago, Grayscale had 4 times that amount. They had over 600,000 Bitcoins. I think it was about $28 billion worth. So, you know, astronomical amount. These guys have been doing this since 2003. Granted, the fund, I don't think, came available until about 2015, I think. But anyway, so they've got an awful lot of Bitcoin. Why have I just explained that way to you? Because there potentially is reasons as to why Grayscale are having to sell their Bitcoin, which I'll get onto in a moment. But let's just start going over some of the news articles that have started to come out over the last few days. So, you know, January the 12th was when we were first alerted to. People follow wallets all the time. And you can, you know, that's the beauty of the blockchain technology, isn't it? We can follow those. And with Grayscale, we actually know what their wallets are called, what their wallet addresses are if you want, and there are websites that track them. One of them I'll show you a little bit later on. So we started to see that they were moving funds, small initially, but starting to move funds. Jamie's put 2013. Okay, maybe that's when it was available for. And so people starting to say, okay, you know, 12th of January, those dates will all come back in a moment. So it's a couple of days after ETFs were approved, and I think it might be the first day of trading, might be the second. But 41 million in outflows is nothing particularly, but then it started to pick up. And then we started to see, you know, only 7 days later, that's potentially nearly $5 billion worth of Bitcoin had actually been sold. And I'll get you the more up to date, but at the time of this news article coming out, I think it was something about 52,000 Bitcoin had been sent from Grayscale to Coinbase to sell. So again, a huge amount of Bitcoin. And they were steadily moving this anywhere from 10 to 14,000 Bitcoin every day. Now, yesterday and today, that continued. And so there's been approximately another 28,000. It's about 80,000, I think it's at the moment. So about another 28,000, 14,000 on each of those 2 days, approximately, that Grayscale have sent. They're continuing to do this. So again, they have moved nearly 80,000 Bitcoin. I can't do the math. I'm sure someone can do it. What 80,000 times 40,000 is, but that's where you can see the ultimate value of that. So again, news articles are starting to come, and it's interesting that it's always pointing to Grayscale. It's like these articles, you know, the headline is everything, and then you get into the news article itself, and maybe it's not all that we've seen, but we're starting to create the narrative that potentially Grayscale are the ones that are causing this to come down. We've even got it in the weekly summaries, GBTC selling. So they talk about the dollar, maybe that's the thing, but they skirt over that one as quick as they can, really. They talk about massive GBTC, that is really hard to say, I don't know why. Outflows impacting the price, and so again, kind of out of date here, because we know at the time of this, there was 38,000 BTC had left it. But actually, what this shows here, for those of you that are perhaps a little bit more aware of this yourselves, there's a clue here, because it's actually saying that the 9 ETFs have already bought 68,000 Bitcoin. So I'm already starting to question this. Now, that's not what the article's telling us. The article is just sticking to the fact that BTC is flowing out of Grayscale. But what we really should be looking at is, well, if they've, at the time of this article, only sold 38,000, and 99 ETF members over the same period of time have bought up 68,000, then wait a second, there's a 30,000 discrepancy here. So surely there should be a greater buying pressure than there is selling pressure. Surely the price should be going up. So now it doesn't always work like that. I completely appreciate it, but for me, that's what these news articles should be focusing on. There's other articles that kind of come in. I mean, there was so many. I was just picking. I'd never even heard of this website. That's the point. I used it. Hodler Economics. But everyone was jumping on the bandwagon, just talking about Grayscale dumping. You couldn't get through YouTube without seeing a video on it, and you couldn't get through scrolling through crypto Twitter, probably about one scroll before someone was talking about it. So there's certainly, as I mentioned, that narrative is building up. And then what we also find out is FTX have got involved. So remember what I said, large institutions were able to buy shares from the Grayscale Trust. And it just so happened that FTX had 22 million shares. And we now know that they were also looking to sell, to offload those in this same time period. Now, again, this is where the never let the truth get in the way of a good story kind of takes place, because they do have 22 million shares, and at the time of writing, I think that was worth about $950 million. Now, to put that into context, back when that was reported, remember when FTX's trial was going on, we were told about the 22 million shares, and in October, that was worth 450. So between October and now, the share price has doubled. The price of BTC didn't double, but the share price had, because that discount was evaporating away because of the pandemonium and the FOMO about ETFs being approved. So obviously they were looking to take care of it. Now articles are flying out, FTX selling $1 billion worth because it was worth $950 million. But actually, as I say, never let the truth get away with a good story. They've only sold about 2/3 of that, 600 million, not to be sniffed at, of course. But Grayscale have been requested to sell $600 million worth of BTC on behalf of FTX at the time that I know. Maybe they've asked for more now. I have no idea. But so we're starting to see a new narrative. Let's throw another 3-letter acronym in, FTX. Everyone hates FTX. Everyone thinks they're a bad actor. So they are also causing the price to go. Now, you can go on to many a different website. You got bitcointreasury.net. And this will give you sort of some of the data, and you can kind of see where it goes. But again, it doesn't take into account today's. But you can kind of see from the 12th of January, I have to have it over this side here, 2000, then 11, then 13, 10, 14, 14. And there it is today. That January, that other 14 is not correct. There's another load that have come out today. But yeah, you can digress through that. Or you can do what I do, and you can go onto a website. It's in the corner here, Arkham Intelligence. I'll put the entire link in so you can just follow it, and you can have a look at the Grayscale trust yourself. And if you go down to this bottom right box, I mean, okay, you can see what they've got, everything that's in there. Fine, perfect. You can have a look at that. It's quite interesting if you're into that. You can have a look at the profit and loss that they've made and all that kind of stuff. But what I was interested in was a transaction, because a lot of people are like, how do we know what they're doing and where they're selling it? Well, this is how, because Arkham Intelligence back in, I don't know when it was like 2021, sort of identified 1,750 wallet addresses associated with Grayscale. So they identified them all. They've obviously put the names and the ends of the wallets and all that kind of stuff, and they're watching it. And you can see here in the transactions, this is just to today. So this is 5 hours ago. So we've had 2 here to Coinbase. Then they did send 2 others. They sent 1,920 to the actual Bitcoin trusts, the Grayscale Bitcoin trusts. So they were going from that wallet to this wallet. And then we can see again, it picks up Coinbase. And we can see, I mean, I did rough figures adding it up. This is just under 15,000. And you add the 947, the 459, and then you add the rest as we go down. You can kind of see, you scroll all the way. What we do is we ignore this bottom one because that was 1 day ago. We just take the one. So that was today's tranche. And this is the thing, it seems to be every day that they are moving it. There's no acknowledgement from them on their behalf as to why they're doing it. But that is exactly how they're moving things. So before we get into potentially why, let's have a look at some of the figures and what that means. And again, potentially these tables might be misleading, because this one, as an example, only goes up to yesterday. It's January 22. We don't have the data that's come off on this table to give us where we're at. But what are we interested in? Okay, you've got the spot ETFs at the top. Okay, at the bottom you can't see it because my face is in the way, but the very bottom line. Let's see if I can just move the camera. Just a second. Put that there for now. That'll do. I'll move it back in a moment. You can see Grayscale Bitcoin Trust is on the bottom. Why is it on the bottom? Because we're going to sort of do an add and subtract from Grayscale on the bottom to the ETFs on the top, because we can actually see by tracking them how much each of them individually are buying every day, and it's quite a lot. Okay, these are not small figures. And actually, as I say, as we get to the end of close of play yesterday, the ETFs had bought 95,706 BTC. Sorry, I can't do the maths off the top of my head, but times that by 4 and add a few zeros to it, and you're going to get how much that is in dollars. Sorry. Now, from the Grayscale point of view, well, we had 620. We've now only got 550, so it's about 67,000. So again, there's that 28,000 Bitcoin in the green. Okay. Now you take that over the span of, what's it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 days, and it's, well, let's say 27,000. Then what we're looking at is, about 4,500 Bitcoin a day up. And this is the point that I'm trying to make, that if it was just Grayscale that were causing this, well, we can clearly see that ETFs are actually buying more than Grayscale is selling. So maybe it's not just that, but we need to look into why potentially Grayscale could be selling. So we've already talked about FTX. FTX apparently have said that they need 600 million selling. I kind of alluded to, you've got to remember, and where's the best chart for this? I don't know. I should have got this one prepared. Detail. Hopefully this is going to show us a chart. It doesn't. Come on. Give us a chart. Why does this not go back? Is it because I don't have? Okay, that's a shame. I was hoping for the premium discount chart, but it to go back previous years. You're just going to have to imagine, unless someone can tell me that there's a ticker on TradingView for it. But let's go back up. So it's not quite bright. As I mentioned, anyone that bought Grayscale shares during the bear market would have bought at a discount. And now that we're getting to close to parity again, they may just be looking to take profit. Why would they be doing that? Well, these are serious institutional investors that were thinking, well, I can't get my hands on Bitcoin itself. So what I actually want to do is buy the shares for the Bitcoin Trust. Well, now they can get their hands on it, and they happen to be sat on some fat profits from buying deep in the bear market. So maybe they're thinking, well, you know what? Grayscale have been quite stubborn. They're keeping their fees at 1.5%. Well, I can actually now take my profit, which I've sat on for a couple of years. It's been very good to me. Move that, get them to sell that, cash me out. I can then go to another spot Bitcoin ETF provider who are charging super low fees. Some of them 0.2%. Also, some of them are withholding fees for the first 6 months. And then they could look to invest there. So they're still getting the exposure to Bitcoin, but they're not going to have to pay those fees. And I can assure you that 1.3% difference in fees across what they may be spending is going to stack up. So that to me is another thing in which they may be looking at. The other thing we've got to look at, I'm assuming it's similar in the US, but certainly in the UK, we're getting close to tax season. And so maybe the people are having to sell. We know that people do sell in and around this time to pay some tax bills, and that could be the case. But the other side of that, which again relates to sort of the tax side of things, is anyone that bought in the bull market, sort of peak 2021, and never sold till now, they may be at a loss. Well, they may be thinking, and this I assume will not be a large portion of it, but it's another element to consider. Well, actually, if it is tax season and I want to write off some of my losses, then I'll just sell this at a loss, get out of Grayscale now rather than waiting for it to get to a profitable position. I can bank the loss. I can wait for the wash trading window, which I'll explain in a second, to pass, and then I can look to move into an ETF with a clean slate and then go through there. effectively what wash trading is, as I understand it, I might be wrong, so someone can correct me. But effectively, it's a rule, it's a law. I don't know if it's a law, but it's certainly a rule in the United States in which, once you've sold an asset, you have to wait 30 days until you can buy that asset again, or an asset very similar. So if you did have Bitcoin Trust shares and you sold those, if you wanted to get into an ETF, you're going to have to wait those 30 days. Now, that's also kind of interesting, but off topic a little bit, because anyone that is selling is forcing Grayscale to sell on their behalf because they want to get out and move into an ETF. They can't immediately actually go straight into any of these ETFs. As a matter of fact, it could be 3 or 4 weeks until we see those putting their money in. So that kind of suggests that if that's the case and people are wanting to move over, we may get some significant buying pressure again, actually in February when people are allowed to buy that stuff. So, certainly definite speculation there, but it may not be Grayscale that are wanting to do this. They just may be forced to sell. Let's see what the other ones here, because I've gone off on a little bit of a tangent. But anyway, let's have a look. So this is just, I just wanted to illustrate this one here, which again is as of yesterday, but just to try and give you a size of where some of these are. So Grayscale 566, we now know it's down to 552, and I think actually I need to take another 14 off that. So it's going to be around about 538,000 Bitcoin, which is just an unbelievable amount. Assuming that this data is correct, so I can't be bothered in that calculation for every single one. Blackrock have 33,000, Fidelity 25,000, Bitwise 10, Arc 7. These are not small numbers. Even Franklin Bitcoin. I mean, God, 1,160 in the first 5 days of trading is not bad exposure. And I think a lot of the narrative seems to be that institutional investors are not put off by this price declining. We seem to be seeing significant amounts of inflows going into these ETFs every single day. Now, why wouldn't they? If it's getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, then that's certainly presenting them with an opportunity to buy. Amex just put, does the ETF 97k Bitcoin purchased by the ETFs also include OTC? I don't believe it does. And I don't know that for certain, but this is all done through tracking wallets. And if it's OTC, you may not be able to track that. So I think this is actually just through sort of looking through who's holding it, Coinbase, etc., and purchasing that. I don't know that for certain. I'll certainly try and have a look. If it's tracking via wallets, then yes, it does include OTC. If it's them announcing it, then yes, also. Okay. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there. Not sure. But let's have another look on. So, what else could it be? Well, there was an interesting argument that came out halfway through this, which I'm not sure, but posted by Cointelegraph, so it must be true. It said here, did a 5 billion Bitcoin whale sale spark the post ETF Bitcoin price crash? So, one on-chain analyst has suggested that the BTC price pressure could be down to one long-suffering Bitcoin buyer from 2021. So, okay, it goes on to say Bitcoin dropped $9,000 last week. We know it's a little bit, it's about 10 now. But in a post on X, why do they always say formerly Twitter? I think we know that now. James Van Stretton, which we'll have a look at his tweet in a moment, research and data analyst for Crypto Insights from Crypto Slate, drew attention to a massive entity selling BTC. Now, before you're saying probably Grayscale, I don't believe that it is. This isn't attributed to any of the Grayscale wallets, but it is a significant amount. So Bitcoin's 15% dive from 49,000 highs, which began on Jan 11th, is widely attributed to a sell the news event, which again we'll touch on in a moment, as part of the United States approval for spot exchange traded funds. But Van Stratton, however, there is a new contender on the radar. So analyzing the realized price of BTC supply, the price at which coins last moved, conspicuous decrease at the highs stands out. His research implicates an unknown entity in the proceedings. This investor purchased 100,000 Bitcoin during the all-time high runs in 2021. It was worth 4.8 billion at the time. And so it's worth 4.8 billion. They bought it approximately at 48,000. Great maths there. So last week, having held that position through the subsequent BTC price drawdown, the whale finally broke even, and a chance to sell at 49,000 was too good to pass up. So the online data suggests that they then sold at 49,000. I mean, that's not even break even. Let's not kid around here. If they had 100,000 of it and they made 1,000, they made 100 million out of that trade. That's not bad. This is why, in my opinion, Jan 12, Bitcoin had the largest one-day drawdown since FTX collapsed and tanked after the ETF started trading. It goes on to say it was 100 million profit. I'd assume they had held due to 75% unrealized loss. So let's go on to what he's trying to talk about here. So everything I've just said is what he was quoted by saying here. And he goes on to say, for context, Grayscale BTC has only sold at the time of this 27k in Bitcoin with similar demand for inflows from the ETF. So that wasn't enough for Grayscale to be this position. And they don't think it is FTX has liquidated their position yet. So at the time, they didn't think it was FTX's shares either. Now, I haven't really delved any further than this. I saw the article a few days ago. I hit start to save it to come back to, and it turned out to be relevant for what I wanted to talk about. Maybe this has subsequently been debunked. But what they're effectively saying, do I have a chart? No, I don't. Good prep, Harry. Just hide that again. Put it on the weekly. So they're effectively saying that this guy bought here, that circle there. I can't hide everything. And now that it's got back to that peak there, that he's gone and sold it. So that's what the on-chain side data is suggesting. Now, again, this is just me. How many times have I said how much the news hides market makers' intentions? We have talked about for months, since October, since the run, how this is likely a buy the rumor, sell the news event, and that potentially the price has already been, the ETF announcement's already been priced in. And lo and behold, despite half of crypto Twitter and every influencer with over 100,000 followers telling you that you're going to get a god candle to either all-time highs or 100,000, we actually saw the exact opposite. Yes, we saw a spike up, but then we immediately started to see that roll over. And that spike up, if you remember, happened, in the lead up to the actual opening day of trading of the ETF. So it was like another little mini buy the rumor, sell the news event. But since then, we have seen nothing but it roll over. And I would argue, going back to the entire argument of whether or not this is Grayscale's fault, that this isn't Grayscale's fault. This is highly likely, in my opinion, to be all part of a plan from a market maker's point of view of just cashing in on that FOMO, on that greed of both institutional and retail investors, just moving in thinking that this was going to be an easy ride to 100k after that. And the timing is just so crystal clear. And that's the thing, isn't it? After, whether or not you agree that it's, whether or not you disagree with me, and you do think it's Grayscale or it's FTX or it's this whale or whatever, the timing is immaculate. The timing for these news articles is immaculate. We have the ETF approval, the price drops, and immediately we start to see that. Now, don't get me wrong, the fact that Grayscale is selling, I think may well cause a cascade of the flows to happen. A lot of retail will get nervous when a big name like that is moving 14,000 Bitcoin every day and selling it. Joe Blogg's retail with his 0.1 BTC is thinking, well, these guys are selling 14,000 a day. I need to get out because it's going down. And so, I can totally get that once the move has started, making sure that articles repeatedly publishing the amount that Grayscale is selling and other actors are selling and other nefarious, dirty scumbag agencies like FTX are trying to sell as well is just going to add to that. It's going to add to that sort of almost FOMO. It's more of a fear of getting out than missing out, really. So FOGO. So yeah, I can see it. But for me, there's nothing to suggest that this is caused by Grayscale. And my biggest counter to the Grayscale argument is the amount that the Blackrock, bloody hell, I've been brainwashed by that not just Blackrock, but all of the spot ETFs are buying. If they are buying more than Blackrock, then bloody hell, twice now, then Grayscale is selling. then if it was just down to Grayscale, this shouldn't be an issue. You know, if you take it on parity, if you're assuming that everything's getting done through Coinbase, etc., there's sells and there's buys, there's more buys than there's sells, demand is greater than supply, we're going to lead to the price going up. But that isn't the case. There are other people selling than just Grayscale. And that's the point, that the sell pressure is still there. And although I don't have time necessarily to go through the order book, I've been watching people talking about the order books for the last couple of days. And it's interesting to see, you know, there were an awful lot of of buys at key levels, 40,000, 39,000, 38,500, 38,000. As soon as the price gets there, you know, thinking that price is going to get drawn down, so they just get taken away straight away, and it never goes. The price just continues to go through. And that seems to be sacking up again through 38 at regular intervals, all the way down to, I think at the moment, 36,000. So there's something going on there. And to me, this seems like a much longer term play. We can have a look later about how many moves up we've had and whether or not this is, you know, a peak that's formed and we're now going to see drops for a period of time. But right now, everything seems to be tying in with that. And then, of course, there's people, even though I've read it to you and said that Mt. Gox isn't selling yet, there are people that are telling you that Mt. Gox is also adding to this. Well, that isn't the case. So I think the lesson is, I mean, like with anything, even with traditional mainstream media news, never believe anything. As a matter of fact, don't believe what I say. You know, go and check it yourself. I like to think that I try and check things as thoroughly as possible. But, you know, I've always said, you're in this for you. And as much as everyone in this group is going to try and help you, it's you. So, you know, you check this stuff out. It's very easy to find. It can be a bit of a bore, like I appreciate. And if you don't know certain things like this exist, or you don't follow enough people on Twitter, then maybe you don't get to see some of these nuggets. Maybe you do have to rely on those. But just, yeah, I'm very much not that trusting of influencers. And good job I'm not one. Fogo, yep, you heard it here. Right, so for me, as I said, quick summary back, even though I just summarized it. Grayscale is selling, absolutely. But until ETFs stop buying, I don't think they're the main cause. I don't think they can be. I think this is more orchestrated. And what we're seeing is timely news articles to just keep that fear in. And let's look at the fear and greed, you know? I'm going to narrow it up. It's at 50 at the moment. Last month it was 71. Well, we know it was 74. We actually know it tipped over into extreme greed. But we've gone from, I get it, 76 on the 9th, day before ETF announcement, to a nice little tasty 50. There we go. So that, I mean, it's not exactly fearful time. I mean, yes, okay, it's dropped 25%, but 50 is neutral territory. But the way people are acting at the moment, it does seem like there's blood in the water. We're going to get onto this now, but when there's blood in the water, we know what we're going to do. We're going to get our wallets out. Okay. What I'll do, thanks for everyone that's contributed to the poll. I'm going to end it now because we're going to end up starting to talk about that in a moment. So let's just end poll. Perfect. Thank you for everyone that contributed. I think most of you did, so that's great. Okay, let's shut that one down. Let's go here. So we're actually going to now have a look at this chart. So this is the one, you know how it goes. White line, red circles, long-term trend line we've been talking about. Red circles are kind of circles. Our interactions that have happened with it. And then we've got the high block liquidation levels. And you can see the 39,800 to 39,400. Well, that was hit yesterday. So I've just graded it out so we know it was there. But we can see where everything else is building up now. We've got high block data here. Now on the higher time frames, there's almost nothing really, which is, makes you think, well, maybe there's not that much shorting. I'll be honest, I fell into that trap. I fell into it thinking there's no one shorting here, which is odd. But when you drop down a bit, you can kind of see actually we are starting to build up in around 40. Well, from 42 onwards, there's definitely something building up. But if you actually go and have a look at the delta, then yes, we are extremely over in the short side. About 300,000, not dollars, Bitcoin, to the sell at the moment. So that's an imbalance, which in the short term, maybe market makers will look to take advantage of. So just something to bear in mind. But going back to the chart. So what did we see? So again, last week, I'm going to zoom in so we can kind of see it a little bit better. I appreciate small. So this was last Tuesday's candle, and we talked about whether or not, it's below this line. The battle at the moment is whether or not it's going to do that. And then the real battle is whether or not we're actually going to see a close below 50 EMA. 50 EMA represented here with the blue line. So we had that. It koboed off it beautifully, fallen away, bounced back down, koboed back off it, and now we're starting to see significant falling away from the 50 EMA. And yeah, that we went 90 days without touching the 50 EMA. It was unlikely that we were going to hit it once and just keep on going. That just isn't really how it works. And if we go back, when we lose the 50 EMA, we generally stay below it for a while. We lose it by a way. We want to reset a lot of those indicators, which we'll look at in a moment, before we start the run and the move back up. Now, there are times where we have a big reversal here. And this was, I don't want to make excuses every time, but this was the banking crisis. So this was SVB, this was Signature Bank, this was a lot of FUD around Circle and around USDC, which from a crypto point of view was resolved relatively quickly. And so we did see a V-shaped reversal from being below the 50 EMA. We only spent a week under it. It felt longer than that at the time, but that's what it was. And so, we'll have a look at other charts in a moment, but just from where we see this at the moment, much bigger picture, we're below that trend line, depending on what you want to do, but let's just pretend we're Bitcoin bulls. That's not where we want to be. Worse still, we're not only below the 50 EMA, but we are moving away and to the downside. So we're going to even need one of two things: a massive shock that's going to give us some sort of V-shaped reversal, or what's probably more likely, a period of consolidation below this, allow the 50 EMA to catch back up, allow a lot of the indicators to reset, and then we can look at breaking back above that. And the next battle is going to be this line here. I put something in Discord a bit earlier on, and I truly believe as a group we're not the ones that absolutely panic and we throw the baby out with the bathwater, whatever the saying is, when we see this. We've talked about needing this correction for some time, and I think as a group, especially those of you that have been here, it's your second bull market as such, we've seen big drops. But for those of you that haven't, just to give some context of where we are, we'll come to these ones in a moment, but I've gone through it. I just want to have a look, just show you. So last bull run, bearing in mind this crash happened prior to the halving, so kind of similar situation to where we're at the moment. We did have a 63% crash. Everyone should know what date that is. If I just had this chart up with no reference of timescale or price, I would say the vast majority of you will know what that dip was just by looking at it. That was the world shutting down because of the COVID. I was going to call it a crisis, but the COVID. Okay, so yes, it dipped a lot further. Okay, but look at all the others. In the parabolic run, 20%, 17%, 31%, 27%, 19%. We had 5 additional, 6 if you want to include COVID crash, on the parabolic run on the right-hand side of the halving. So, not necessarily to be afraid of. But if we go to, after the bottoming back in 2018, 2017, 2018, again, that lead up to 14,000, we've had 3 big pullbacks, 20%. I could take it back even further if we wanted to and have a look at the parabolic run in the 2017 bull market. And again, I couldn't be bothered writing the text, but you get the point. There's a 40%, a 35, a 32, a 40, a 40, and a 30. So pullbacks are going to happen. We need to get used to them. If you've got spare money on the side, you need to take advantage of them. But don't be afraid of it. Don't panic just because we have a 20% pullback. Even if your portfolio might have gone back into the red because the way you bought in, you hadn't had that significant clearance yet. It's not about freaking out every time that it pulls back. This is not the time to do this. The time to do that, to protect yourself, is during these bear markets. At the moment, we're just trying to take advantage. And as we can see, and that's a coincidence here, but the 4 pullbacks that we've had since the bottoming at the end of 2022, I tried to draw these as accurately as I could, and they've all been 22% at the moment for now on left. But we've experienced this before. Yes, they all came with fear. Those 3 that you saw last year all came with people talking about breaking 15K, dropping back down to the lows that we experienced in November, December of 2022. it always comes with fear, right? And what I'm saying, and what I think we're good at as a group, is putting that emotion to one side and going, I've expected this, we've talked about it long enough, and I have a plan in my head of what I'm going to do. Doesn't mean I'm buying right now, but I'm getting ready. I certainly am getting ready. This could present itself as being the last real buying opportunity prior to the halving. And, you know, after the halving, that's when the real fun begins. That's when we start to see, you know, the lead into the parabolic run. Now, it doesn't happen immediately afterwards, and we kind of do see that Bitcoin takes the front run to start off with, but we're getting much closer. And it may feel like 20 odd months is a long way away to the end of 2025, but I assure you it's going to go quickly. And anyone that's been through a bull and bear market before will know that 2 years may sound like a lot, but it actually goes very quickly, especially when all you can do is spend all your day looking at your portfolio. So, you know, don't necessarily worry. What does 30% look like? Try and line it up. You know what I've got undone? Let me just, so we can actually see it. That's 36%. 30%, for those of you who are interested, from the top of 49,000 is going to be 34,000, which wasn't a level I put in the polls, interestingly. But we're going to get to why I put those levels in the polls in a moment. But 30%, actually that's 31%. Come on, Abby, we can draw it better than that. We can draw it better. Oh, no, we can't. There we go, that's close enough. 34,500. Okay. Why did I have this one and not this one? I'm not necessarily too sure. Do them the other way around though. So, we talked about this 3-4 weeks ago. If you remember, I drew some Fibonacci's. You know, I love the Fibonacci. Cycle top to cycle low. What we kind of said, if you remember, I'll talk you through it very quickly on the other ones, if I can find the brush, was we had cycle, oh, I'm in the way there, starting in 2014 level. Cycle top, cycle low. We then have the price come back up. It hits the 0.78 and it retraces down over a couple of months. These are monthly candles before making its run back up. That's what happened in that one. Then we go into the 2017 blow off top, down to the cycle low. And we've had it run. Granted, it actually didn't make it this time. So comes back down. I should have said, we interact with the 382. That's what we had said, sorry. So we do interact with the 382. Apologies there. That's an important step to make. And we come up to this 786, which I accept. This one, it did fall shy, but we had that test right back down, and then off it went. Then we talked about, well, a lot of similarities to this one. So we take the cycle low, cycle top, cycle low. We've messed around the 382. We've absolutely, when we called it before this even happened, we were saying we need to watch out for this. It's absolutely hit it to a T. And we've already rejected off it. Now we're already sitting at the 618. And you know how much I love the 618. So maybe, actually, 38,000 is as low as we're going to go. 618 was where it went to last time. Time before that, we did get to the 0.5. But potentially, the 618 is where it's going. So from a higher time frame point of view, looking at monthly or weekly, we can put this on the weekly so it's a bit easier to see. If this level doesn't hold, 38,000, hence why I talked about it, hence why none of you suggested this was a level. But it's a 618. It's a pretty big level. Grayscale stops selling tomorrow and everyone's back on the ETF bandwagon. Maybe we do turn around. But prior performance, prior experience has suggested we hit this level up here, we come back. Now, if we do lose this one, this is where I'm going to be looking at. In between that 31,000 and 33,000. Now, there's a lot of noise to get through between there, but 0.5 would be a target I got to. Now, I'll explain what I'm going to do in the next chart, but if it breaks below that, this is for me, this is my doomsday level. This is my capo level, if you will. It's going to be sub 30,000 if we get there. I'm thinking it's going to be around about the 382. I will give you a bit of grace and say maybe down to 26,000. Having a look at these here. That was really poorly drawn. I wanted to move the chart first. Having a look there. Maybe that's where we get to. Now, I think if that's the case of where we get to, I'll probably be out of funds by then because I'm going to look to purchase and get in before that. But I think that could be a serious level. Now, we're going to start to get to some psychological levels here. I will accept that. And if that 26,000 doesn't hold, it was a fairly decent, we had there and there. We have the peaks here, the peaks there. It's a decent level. We even had this wick down here. If we're losing that, then we are going to be talking about some lows. I think we're going to get some. I don't think it's just going to drop there over a week. It'll take time to get there, but I'd mark those levels for me somewhere on your charts. Mark them in rectangles if you want to. But yeah, that's something that I would seriously be looking at. Now, let's have a look at what the market maker charts are thinking. And I will go on the smaller time frames here because today may end up as a little bit of an indecision candle, where the wick to the north and the south are equally sized. But we've looked at this before. We're trying to establish from a daily point of view, from a weekly point of view, where exactly we're sitting in the rises. It kind of feels like we've hit a top, but we try and always address this each time, don't we? We're thinking this is a W. Now, there's two trains of thoughts, isn't there? There's, R1, R2, R3, correction. Didn't really do much, didn't do a full correction. We hit a W, rise 1, down, rise 2. I need to do that, sorry. And then we got rise 3. So we got 3, 2, 1. Now, maybe that's it. Maybe, we didn't get all of the corrections that we needed. We didn't get all the drops. Nothing works out 100% of the time. There is a W around about September. Then we started to have those moves up. So potentially, there's the opportunity. What we haven't seen at the moment, if this is rise 3, is an M. Is an actual clear M. And certainly not on the daily. And there's a question straight away. Is there actually an opportunity, and I will break it down into small time frames at the moment, for us to actually see some form of a retracement? Certainly back to the 50 EMA, although maybe a breach above it. Doesn't necessarily need to get all the way back up to 49,000, but somewhere around about that, well, I was going to say 42,000, which is kind of at the 50 EMA as it sits. But some kind of move back up that may signal that we're getting at least some form of a second peak coming through. But before I go down the lower time frames, and let's just clear, sorry, I'm trying to find just deleting the drawings. I got rid of my, just a second. Okay. What we've seen. So let's forget rises at the moment. And the daily, that's the new bit that I'm kind of looking at though. Just because just the way it seems to work in my head. But what have we seen? We talked about the fact that we lost the 50. What we've also done, we lost the 10 and the 20 prior to that. But on the way down of battling with the 50, we were being pushed down by the 10. Now remember, the 10 is the cyan, is it? Light blue color. And that's what we were expecting. We bought ourselves a little bit of time over the weekend, and then we dropped down through it. And yeah, that seems like it's going. These are aggressively pointing down at the moment. These are not going to plateau out anytime soon. These are going to move down relatively steep. And if that's the case, then it's going to be a bit of a battle to get back up those. But if we start to drop down, let's go on to the 4 hour. Again, we can see that what's happened with the 4 hour. Yeah, okay, we lost the 50 around about the 12th with the move down. But now we're starting to see that the 50, the 200, the 20, and the 10, they're all fanning out quite nicely. And these pullbacks that we're having, they're only really getting to the 10 at the moment. We've not had an interaction with the 20 for a while. I mean, over the weekend, where did the weekend occur? When nothing happened. But now we've got everything back and price starting to move. And so, again, you look at a move up to the 50 on the 4 hour, maybe you get to 41 and a half, what we talked about beforehand, but we still got a battle with these ones here. We go down on even lower time frames. Maybe we're actually starting to get a little bit of evidence we might actually start to see some sort of a bounce, because Now we start to have a look at the drops. And we have seen some big drops here. You know, we've had drop 1, some sort of recovery, drop 2, some sort of recovery, drop 3. Now maybe on the 1 hour we're starting to form some form of a W. And so if that's the case, don't be surprised, don't be caught out. If actually what we're going to see in the, in the real short term is a bit of a move back up. Now I'm not trading at the moment. I'm not looking for any entries for longs or shorts or anything like that. But what I would say, if that's something that you're looking at, depending on which time frame you're trading it on, again, ignore maybe you can ignore the 50 because it's only on the 1 hour, but the 200's here, and that's at 41,500. I'm thinking 41,500 ties in with the daily, the 4 hour, and also the 1 hour. There's also the psychological high and the lows in that area, all that kind of stuff. What I'm saying is, if price gets back up to there, doesn't mean you automatically enter a short or anything like that. But if it gets up to there, it starts to look like it's weakening. Maybe there is an ideal entry in and around that. As I say, I'm not particularly doing that at the moment. I don't know, maybe if he gets up there and I start to see it, it might be a case for firing up some sort of account to do that. But right now, that's not really on my radar. But I just see that that is potentially where we're going. Now, you could take this down onto the 15 and everything lower, but I think we kind of got to where we need to go. So if I just... I didn't have another chart ready for it. Let's go back onto this one. So what am I looking at? Because I do have a bit of money on the sideline. I'll explain in a little bit, but basically I sold a couple of projects I just wasn't interested in anymore, and so I've got some money with where I want to go, and I'm kind of identifying some levels. Now I can be boring, I know. Throw a fib up. I like my fibs. Okay, I'm just going to take this. I know it's on this one because this is it from the low point to the high, but I just want to drag it out here because it's a similar kind of level, just to show you how well it's respected these fibs. Okay, that's what I'm looking at. So this is why I'm starting to look at where I want to see if there's any interest. And for me, my eyes are immediately drawn to this clump here. And I don't, I never draw an exact level. I'm not going to wait for 34,337. I'm going to look for an entry in and around there. And that's where I'd like to get to. I will have my eyes on 37,000 in case it has some sort of reaction there. But ideally, I'd like to start moving in. There'll be a little bit of Bitcoin because I've been withholding buying from a business point of view for a while, waiting for a drop because they want to buy above 40,000. I've got the opportunity to do that now. But that's where I'll be looking. And then after that, if it gets lower again, I'll be honest, again, I will be looking. I don't think I'm going to wait till it gets to 32. 33 is probably going to be the level that I want to start getting in at. And that's going to be where I think if we get to 33 and I'm not fully in, I'll be surprised. If it gets below that, I am going to be pulling up the covers on the cushions on the sofa, trying to see if I can find anything else within there. But the vast majority of what I'm going to buy is not actually Bitcoin related. It's going to be some of the other ones I've looked at. And I know one of the questions on the Avengers call was about that. So I'll touch on that a little bit later. But yeah, that's kind of where I see it. I mean, I do think we could see a move up. We've had some strong moves down. So don't be surprised that we don't see some form of move up. Remember, it's the volatility that the market makers prey on. What they don't want to see is everyone talking about how it's just going to go down. So we may start to see a little bit of a move up. Thinking that 41,500, a break of that, and maybe we've started to turn a corner as we get back into this noise. I'm going to find this noise here. But for me, maybe it's a move up there and it's coming back down. And then the fibs are what I'm going to look at. The fibs tie in with previous price action and sort of where I'm looking to place some buys. If you had your own fiat now ready to put in, when we enter, would you use low? I've just answered that one for you. I don't really care about the RV, the loan system. I got to be careful what I say here because I am actually doing that. I'm doing it on Solana at the moment because I'm trying to do some airdrop farming. But I've basically given them Tether and I've loaned out USDC. So it's very unlikely it's going to get liquidated. I'm just doing it for the points so I can qualify for an airdrop. But generally, I've never bothered doing it. I just don't like it. I just, at a moment's notice, the second you take your eye off the ball, chances are it's going to depeg and you're going to get caught out somehow. And I can assure you, during the last bull run, the vast majority of questions that I got asked was, Harry, I've done a loan. I need to get out pretty darn quick and I have no idea how to do it. Can you help? And having to help people unravel those positions has kind of just put me off wanting to do it myself. So I personally wouldn't do it. But if it's something you want to do, all I can say is make sure you understand every step in the process. And that includes getting out. If you need to get out in a hurry and you've no idea how to do it, can't remember what you sent where, that could be the difference between you getting liquidated and you getting out. Mr. Tacos has put 33k lines up currently with the 50 EMA on the weekly, and the 200 EMA isn't far behind it. Excellent spot. Let's go on weekly. Let's hide all those drawings again. I mean, we didn't talk about vector candles, but they're definitely, when you look at the 4 hours, there definitely are some. Yeah, so the 50 is at, just about 300. 200 is down at 27, which is that absolute end of the world level. 37,000's at the 20 at the moment. I mean, we've lost the 10. But yeah, okay. Your camera is blurry. It's not focused on me. I don't know why. Let's just. Oh, it has gone very blurry, hasn't it? Let's see if I can get it to focus back in on me. Nope, it's not wanting to. It's just, you can see when I put my hand there, it's focused, and I don't know why the autofocus has not kicked in, but for some reason it hasn't, and it doesn't seem to want to. No, I want to even put my face right up. There you go. Look at that. I don't know. Oh, there we go. It worked. It worked. All right, let's go back to the live. Always something, isn't it? Do manual focus. There we go. Yep. All I need was my big shiny forehead. Right. That's it. I'm kind of conscious of where the time's at. A few weeks ago, or no, a few months ago, I talked and I moaned about one of the biggest things I don't like about Polkadot. I'm not going to spend much time talking about this. I'm not even looking for pleas for it. This is a prime example of what I was talking about. So Polkadot doesn't do its own marketing as such. What it has, it's created an open governance system in which people can put proposals forward to do brand awareness and other things. Don't get me wrong. But the particular thing that winds me up is the brand awareness. They can dictate how much they deserve to be paid, and then it gets voted on, which in some sort of utopian world seems like a brilliant idea. But so far, on the Kusama network, they really ruined it because there was not as many eyes on it and people got away with murder. And on the Polkadot network, this is really what is happening. So this, because I follow a lot of Polkadot channels on Twitter and YouTube, this one has really piqued a lot of interest and a lot of debate. Referendum 401 is a brand awareness campaign from Crypto Banter, Ran Neuner. Now, Ran Neuner is a fairly well-known crypto influencer. He's been around for a very long time. His Crypto Banter channel has 700,000 followers. He's got 3 or 2 other channels, each with over 100,000 followers. So he is a big player within the system. But he is asking for 39,000 dots, just under $300,000, to do a campaign to promote Polkadot. Now, he doesn't go into any specifics about what he's even going to talk about. It's not like there's a set amount of videos for it. There's not like there's a set amount of titles of what he's going to go about. It's just he's going to target Polkadot marketing, whatever the hell that means. And a lot of people have an issue with it because that is an obscene amount of money to be charging for something which is just creating awareness. I think most people have heard of Polkadot. So unless you're actually creating specific content to try and assuade people either like Polkadot or they don't. And I'm not saying it's a 50-50 split. But just to say that Polkadot exists is not enough because most people know that it exists. It's a top 20 token. It's got one of the biggest OGs in the crypto space. So this just seems like an enormous amount of money. Now, you can see on the right-hand side, there's a summary of where it's going. This, only a few days ago, got to a very nervous level because a couple of large whales supported the eyes. And they were about 12 million people ahead. So people started asking for people to vote. And actually, the nays have started to sway back the other side because, hey, the treasury doesn't matter. It's a certain amount of money that goes into that, or a certain amount of Polkadot, that when it's gone, it's gone. So it's going to be used, but it's not just used on brand awareness. And so to be wasting 40,000 DOT on, I don't know what this is going to be, really winds me up. Now, I personally have not a lot of time for crypto banter or rant. And that, it is personal. It's nothing that he's personally done to me, but arguably he is a very big pump and dumper. He certainly was in the last bull cycle. And even if he has changed, I don't like it when influencers use their influence to take advantage of people that have genuinely looked to them to provide support and help. And that's what pump and dumpers do. And he's been caught doing that. There's evidence, a blockchain, documented evidence that he did it. So that just puts him in the wrong set. But the point for me is that loads of big influencers have tried to get large amounts. My suggestion is that this needs to be capped. Polkadot need to do something about this to restrict the amount they give away, because people are just putting their own figures in at the moment, and it is not working. Unfortunately, there's still 10 days to go with this. Van has a lot of followers. He may be garnering up support to sway this the other way. I'm not asking you to cast your votes or anything like that. I'm just making you aware of it, because it does wind me up. But this is it. Classic example. Only a year ago, actually 2 years ago. I mean, he was out there asking why we, what it is, why we do it. Now, to be fair, it's a genuine question. Why do we need DOT and Kusama? But once you understand what Polkadot is, you understand why you need Kusama. And if you've ever used the Solana ecosystem, you'll know you want a testnet, because they can't get it right first time. And so, it's simple things like this. This guy's been around a long time. He was a big name back in the last bull run. He knew, well, he should have known what Polkadot was. He should have been talking about whether he loved it or hated it. And so he obviously hasn't. And now he's asking the community, because he's in love with this project so much, for $300,000, which will ultimately just lead to $300,000 worth of sell pressure, because I'm sure he won't keep hold of it. Anyway, that's where it sits. Just my little rant and follow-up. It's something that I will constantly keep an eye on, sadly. I voted nay, and that's where that one sits. Could this not have a long-term negative effect? Have someone like this so closely involved in DOT? Well, I don't think he will be closely involved in DOT. I think this is just for a month of his time, and once that time is served, he will move on to something else. I just see it as influencers see the opportunity to make some money, and some slip through the radar, which some have. I mean, when I did this talk a couple of weeks ago, we went through a series of some that nobody picked up on it, and they were paying people with 300 followers $5,000 to do a couple of videos. One of them was on how to make a wallet. I mean, yeah, it's just, I don't think it's the best system. It does at least show that there is an army out there that's willing to fight for it. But yeah, I think the system needs to change. And if it is an open gov system, I would like someone to, put forward a new proposal to put a cap in or something like that. But anyway, but if people know him as a pump and dumper and he's shilling it, would that scare people away, possibly towards selling their DOT holdings? Maybe, yeah. Now, for me, it's too big to pump and dump, I would argue. His pump and dumps have been very synonymous with seed rounds, ICOs, all of that kind of stuff. Him talking it up, it launches, he sells everything that day. The day after he launched it up and told everyone it was launching. And if you go on to ZachXBT, you can scroll through his recent tweets. He re-put this out about this time. He caught him several times doing that. So if you don't believe me, just follow. Now, there's lots of crypto influencers that have done that in the past. Don't get me wrong. I'm not an influencer. I don't have a following, so I don't have to worry about that. But it does wind me up, because we're all here. I think we're all here to help each other. And I'm sure he does come out with some good content, but you can just, how can you trust that ain't going to happen again? That's my problem with it. Anyway, let's move on to some Avenger questions, because there's a few. I'll try and get through them as quick as I can. So Chris has put, I'm increasingly drawn to more and more projects this bull run as I research several narratives. So my question is, how many tokens should I have in my portfolio? Following on from that, if you were starting a portfolio from now and had 10K to spend in it, how would you break this down across the portfolio? I mean, Chris, that is such a difficult question, because there's no right answer in terms of how many tokens you should have in your portfolio. one, because we're really into it. How do you not know there's something else is going to come along? I think instead of thinking it about how many tokens you should have in your portfolio, perhaps think of it as how much time can you dedicate to ensuring you stay on top of a certain amount of tokens. Now, I appreciate, maybe not you guys on the call, because you guys are spending time to educate yourselves about cryptocurrency, whether it's with me, whether it's with other people in the industry, Siam, whatever. You're dedicating your own free time to do that, and I thank you for coming along. But what I would say is, if you can't dedicate, let's pick an arbitrary number, 10 minutes a week to each token you have in research, and I mean keeping up to date with what's going on, price, fundamentals, etc. If you can't give that time, and that needs to be 10 minutes per token, I would argue it should probably be 10 minutes a day, but I appreciate everyone has other jobs. Then that should be how you limit. If you can only afford 100 minutes a day and you need 100 minutes a week, then maybe it's 10 tokens is what you should be limited to, because we're not always going to be there, and you may get into things that none of us are following or are interested in. And so the onus is on you. And I mentioned a few minutes ago, I've dropped a couple of projects because I just don't follow them anymore. I don't keep it. And one of them was Matic, Polygon. I think Polygon will do well, but I don't keep up on it. I couldn't tell you what the latest things are going on there. And the other one was Elron. It rebranded and I didn't even realize. So again, I think that'll do very well, but I'm not following up on it. I'm not putting in the time to keep up the research on it. So I could be caught out. And for me, that just means as good as it could be, but I can't be bothered to put the time into it, then I'm going to move on. There were other reasons why I moved on, but I just dropped them. That was it. I waited till they got back into a bit of profit, dropped them, and I moved on, and I got a bit of cash on the sideline. So, I said I didn't want to get into more than 15 tokens this bull run. I can assure you I'll be in more than 15 tokens, because I've got, that says mobile, but I've got basically from mobile down to Tau here. I know Tau's twice, but I've got 1, 2, 3, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I've got 12 tokens already. Link I'm out of, I'd like to get back in. So I've got 12 already. So that's 120 minutes a week. I could say I would easily do that. But this potential buy list is a genuine buy list. There's every single one on here I would consider buying. That's another what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 13. It's another 13. So I may end up with 25 tokens. So by my own rule of thumb, that's 4 hours a week I need to dedicate. Now, if you've got a daytime job, that's 2 hours on a Saturday, 2 hours on a Sunday, just to keep it. But I don't believe 10 minutes is necessarily enough. I would argue maybe things like BTC, maybe you don't need 10 minutes on it, but how much do you know about ordinals? How much do you know about smart contracts? How much do you know about network effect or about what's going on with the miners or whatever? Or Grayscale selling, that's the kind of research that maybe you need to be looking into. So I think Bitcoin's probably the one I follow the most. That's a long-worded answer to say it's as many as you can afford to keep on top of. I'm not delusional to not think a lot of these are gaming and AI, but there may be another narrative that comes on that I want to get involved in. But there's some really good projects here. A lot of them are new, so don't have much knowledge on them. So that means I need to spend a little bit more time. I need to understand the tokenomics more. I've got to look into vestings and unlock schedules. Got to look into roadmaps. What are they trying to bring out where? And suddenly that 10 minutes is not quite enough. So yeah, Chris, that's it. In terms of pot allocation, you've got 10K. I think first thing you got to do, let's just assume it's 10K, is you're not going to be making FU money. You're not going to be retiring off this. Even if you 30x your portfolio, it's 300,000. By the time you pay tax on that, you're potentially looking at 200K. And as well as that's going to be a lovely bit to sit back on, or lovely bit to present in the next bull market. That's nice. So because you've only got a smallish amount, and apologies for someone that might think that's a large amount, I'm just trying to give you context here. You then need to understand, well, what is it that you're trying to achieve? Is there a figure in mind? Because if you've got 10K and you're wanting to make 100K, you want to 10x it, putting it all in Bitcoin is probably not the way to do it. Maybe putting it all in Ethereum, you might get a 10x, but I'd say Ethereum is just as good a chance of getting a 5x. It's already at $2,000. 10x, $10,000 Ethereum is quite a lot. So then you're thinking, well, okay, I'm not going to be going for the super safe ones. I need to have a look at some of the others. And I would suggest that a decent amount of the top 20, top 30, will likely somewhere between 5 and 10x. And so you can maybe splatter a portion of your 10,000 in that. Maybe you put 1,000 in 5 tokens. And these are, I'm just pulling these figures out of my head, so that's 5,000 spent. But then you're going to go, okay, well, I do want to try and make something. So I need to try and find some that are 20x and beyond. So they're going to be lower cap ones, but they come with higher risk. So then maybe you find 10 tokens and you put 500 in each of those, except not all of them will hit. But suddenly, if some of them do hit your 20, 30x's, you're going to start to build that up. But really, it's all about, work it backwards. I know the front end is you've got 10,000, but where do you want to be? How much nervousness are you willing to take to get to that level? So if it all goes to 0, how messed up are you? And just work that back. And if you really need to make 100 and 150x, whatever it's going to be, so 150,000, 15x, whatever, then you've got to try and work the maths as to, okay, well, can't just put it all in BTC because that's a 15x, and you can do the figures about what the market cap would have to be for that, whether or not that's realistic, or you can have a look at some of the smaller ones. And generally, anything over, no, that's too. I was going to say anything over $1 billion. I think you're going to struggle to find 100x. I think that's probably fair. I really do. I know other people in the group have different opinions on that. That's a big, you're going to be looking for the ones that you're going to want to get the realistic 20, 30, 40, 50x's. Maybe probably looking at sub 1 billion market cap already. But also have a look at the token circulating supply. I don't know if that helped. I hope it does. What are your thoughts on Tau, given? I'm going to talk about Tau in a moment. I will get to that. Harry, have you ever heard of Gold Fever and your thoughts on NXRA Alliance block? I like Gold Fever, NGL, not going to lie. Okay. What is it? Gaming token. Let's have a look. It launched in 2021. Worst time you can possibly imagine to launch. It was at $9, nearly $10. It's now at 10 cents. I mean, it's been a stable coin for a while. I don't necessarily slag that off. We know a lot of had 90% retracements. This is down 98% at the moment, and that's after a pump. Let's have a look at the last year. So yeah, it had a move up in October, November, leading towards end of November. And then, when the rest of the market continued, this actually fell away. So it's relatively old. It's a gaming token. Let's go on the website and let's have a look. I might not be able to comment on this. Okay. I'm not going to bother watching the trailer. 3-month play month. Okay, so you can play a game at the moment. NFTs. It's got an NFT, so it must have a market space or something. Make it so it looks like it's play to earn. I'll be honest, I don't know. I'd have to see, what is the game. It looks like it's some sort of maybe pirate-based game. Maybe you're searching for gold or something like that. If it's, like an RPG or something where, there's some interactions, there's a real, roll around and all that, perfect. If it's one of those actually card games and it just had off the backdrop of one of this, maybe not. I need to have a look at it. So I don't know, but let me get back to you on that one. I'll put it on the radar. Market cap's only 4. I mean, that's what we're talking about, low cap gems. I'm not saying this is a gem. This has only got a market cap of 4 million. This is a high risk one, but opportunity to grow is definitely there. It is on centralized and decentralized exchanges. It is an ERC20 token. Well, it might be a Bet20 actually, I don't know, but you can store it on MetaMask. I'll have to have a look in it. I'm sorry I can't help out with that too much. There was another one, Alliance something. Alliance, that was it. I mean, this one's been around for about a year and it's had some fairly decent growth, to be fair. What does it do though? tags. It's a real world asset. So we know that's a narrative. We know that's a narrative that people think are going to do well. I personally, I don't think this is the bull run for real world assets. So I'd go off on a tangent there, but I think if anything, we're going to build infrastructure for real world assets, as in we're going to build the capability to maybe start to understand how we will tokenize stuff. But I think it's the next bull run. I think we might be one bull run earlier. And okay, I might be wrong with that, but I would have liked to have actually seen some real movement in terms of actual tokenization of assets that people talk about regularly, that trade regularly, for this to really take off. I think what we may see is a few outliers actually go ahead and try and do it, maybe prove that it works, but it'll be the next bull cycle in which it takes off. I don't really have time to have a look at this at the moment. Real world asset is definitely a tokenization of real world assets. It's definitely a hot sector. I think it could do well. The fact of the matter that the price has continued to climb pretty much the whole year it's been out, I think is very positive. Only a $90 million market cap, and it has nearly 90% of, or over 90% of the circulating supply already out, which is great from a tokenomic point of view. You can buy on KuCoin, you can also buy on DEXs. Lots of positives there at the moment. Out of the two, this is the one that I'd have more interested in researching, if I'm being honest. Jeff's put, if you get time, I was wondering what your thoughts on MicroStrategy and mining stocks. We got Jamie in the chat. Jamie is the go-to person for crypto mining stocks, although don't talk to him about HUT8. So mining stocks having less investment upside now that is potentially a better way to get exposure to crypto through the BTC ETF. I know RT has talked about outflows from GPT, which we've already talked about, so I won't cover. I'm considering if I should deploy some SIPs and ISA funds into MicroStrategy and mining stocks with a view of buying BTC ETF later when it's available. So let's just tidy that one up straight off the bat. At the moment, as a UK resident, you cannot have any exposure to any of the Bitcoin ETFs that are currently in the US. There's no timeline on when they may become available to us, but that's just where we currently sit. In terms of SIPs, again, there's no access for Bitcoin ETF through that. So you're right, SIPs and ISA funds, pretty much if you want to get exposure to crypto, are going to be either in some sort of gaming sector like NVIDIA, MicroStrategy, or mining stocks. Now, the thought on whether or not they have less investment upside now because of the Bitcoin ETFs, I'm not necessarily too sure. You know, at the end of the day, Bitcoin still needs to be mined. And yeah, okay, there are other factors that can affect mining companies, such as graphics cards like NVIDIA, electricity, and all of that kind of stuff that go with it. But there is still potentially upside, and I would argue there's still potentially upside to get into mining stocks now, you know, because we're about to start a bull run. Where you want to get into, where you potentially don't want to get into, is when you start to think that we're getting close to a lot of top, because mining stocks and MicroStrategy do have a tendency to rhyme with what Bitcoin's doing. So you start your SIPs or your ISA fund into mining stocks, 2025, mid 2025, you may find that that is not the best time to do it. And I was actually thinking about, sorting out my SIPs, because my pensions at the moment are all over the shop. I'm wondering whether or not now is an ideal time to move that over. And I think it is. I think there is, if you were to do it now, potentially opportunity. I can't really offer too much financial advice. I'm just talking about what I'm thinking about doing, how my mindset is going. I mean, I don't have all of them listed, but I do have a couple. Traditional. So let's have a look at, let's just get rid of all of this for the moment. We don't need it. Let's go on the weekly. So this is Marathon, and it's at $16 at the moment. Last bull run, we're talking $81. So there's a 5x potential. And I know that doesn't sound like a lot when we're talking crypto side of things, but there's definitely potential within there. We're on a downtrend at the moment. I mean, without necessarily charting it, there's definitely key levels that we can look at. Or there's issues. It's just how quickly you want to set it up and get within there. But as you can see, sort of the end of the bear market 2022, and look what's happened. As Bitcoin's gone up, exactly what mining stocks have done, exactly what MicroStrategy has gone and done. And yeah, it's had a pullback, but we're pulling back at the moment as well. And MicroStrategy peaked in April or in March 2021, which is when we transitioned from Bitcoin to altcoins, at 1200. So there's a potential 2-3x on the cards there, depending on as and when you want to get in. So I do think that there is opportunities to do that. You don't have an opportunity to trade in an ETF at the moment. And even if they suddenly allow UK institutional investors to do that, if you're wanting to do it as a SIPS or something like that, then you may not have afforded that position for even longer. We don't know when that is. And, it's not like the government have come out and suggested that now the SEC have changed their stance and they're going to look to do it. So we could be waiting months, years, who knows? There's plenty of other mining stocks out there, of course, but they generally are all moving in the same direction. I think Hut 8 is probably the only one that isn't and hasn't. It's tried to go in a different direction in terms of sort of sustainability and renewable energies and everything. So I've got a note on my scratch pad. I started looking into it. I've started to pull together the information on my 4 or 5 different pensions out there, so I can try and do this. And it's just about having the conviction to pull the trigger. So Jamie, who is, I know he's in this, we talk about this, Hut 8 is probably the best buy at the moment. I think from a risk to reward, look at it, it's at $6. It peaked at 80. So when we were talking about 5x for others, this is like a 12, 13x. So, hey Stuart, thanks for tuning in. There's not going to be much longer on this one, I promise. Chris has put, really appreciate an excellent Avenger call every week. Thanks. Thank you. Could you revisit your list of potential punt buys that you covered last week and see what your opinion is on their progress? What is your view that sometimes it's the ones that have dropped the least that are better buys as they're more resilient, more likely to bounce back for a quicker short-term play? Obviously not always. Chris, I have the exact opposite view of that. So, using CoinMarketCap, anyone can set up an account on CoinMarketCap and create your own watch list. So I have a watch list, which contains a lot of the ones that I was looking at. And what I do, I do look TradingView as well, but just, straight off the bat, if you want to start your research and your process of this, is set up a watch list. Now you can actually customize this, but I have a 7-day one here. Have a look at what's fallen the most over the last 7 days. They're the ones that I then look at from a TA point of view. Sia, Injective, Oasis. Injective is a great project. It's been so overcooked at the moment. I'm desperate for an opportunity for it to pull back. It's pulled back 22% in the last 7 days. Fantastic. Near Protocol, one that I absolutely believe in, 21%. I know this project's going to do great things. So the fact that it's fallen hard now doesn't scare me. And I look into it. So I do the opposite. I kind of think, if I'm on my watch list, they're generally, I personally believe, a good project. Hopefully they've got solid fundamentals and they've got good economics to back it. The fact that they've had a decent pullback is exactly what I'm looking for, especially after such a hot rise over the last couple of months. So I'll have a look at this first, scroll down, see which other players. Now, they're all generally around 20%, so this doesn't give me much of an outline. Now, what Jamie has said, which is true, is, Tau and Pith. Tau and Pith, we're just giving 0 Fs to how the market's correcting at the moment. And Pith, I really missed the opportunity to get into, which I discussed last week. But I'll go from there, and then I'll have a look. And so I've got, this is the charts you were talking about, and I've got my potential buy list here, and we'll have a look. So, we'll start with Asta, which is it's a rival to Moonbeam. It's on the Polkadot network. I was kind of late to the party with this one, and for me, I've only got a certain amount of money left, so I'm setting myself clear goals. As good a project as they may be, they don't get into those zones, I'm not going to do it, because I'm also trying to think about return on investment. And so, I want to try and get in as good as possible. Now, this one, it's obviously, what are the levels here? 10, 20, and a 50. So it's bounced off the 20. But, when I'd probably put this in, this was in the 50. So I've got the buy zone here. What these are then tied into previous levels and fibs. So I've targeted them. And the lower ones on pretty much every one's are what I'd call, shit the bed bids. It really dumps. That's where I'd look to go. I haven't placed any orders for any of these at the moment, but I do watch them every day. BMX. So BMX is in my initially identified buy zone. However, when this formed the wick, I really thought that potentially we might have it falling further. So I'm holding off BMX at the moment. It's riding right at the bottom of this buy zone. Could bounce from here, and it has bounced off the 382. So if it does want to continue this bullish rectangle, now would be an ideal time. But I'm looking at this not from a trade, but from an investment point of view. I want to get in as low as possible, and I want to be able to ride it up. So I'm looking at just under, or just over 1 cent. Might be being greedy there. So maybe I need to reevaluate at the 1.13 cent. Have a look. FET. So FET, again, look at them all. They've all had strong rises up. They've now all lost their 50 EMA. They're all trading under it now. FET has traded 7-8 days in a row, red candles. I'm expecting a pullback, but nothing necessarily more at the moment. And my first buy, I'm not being too greedy on this, is actually only at the 382. A lot of other alts have already hit that 382. So that's where, I'd be looking to see whether or not we can get down to. So yeah, it's moving in the right direction. But again, I'm not going to jump into it too quickly. You get the point. Don't necessarily need to go through more. I have checked already today. None have hit within there. Flux is, I could get it now, but my buy zone, as I said, marries in with where I want an ROI. Injective really shot up. Now I need this to do a hell of a lot more falling. But if it loses the level it's currently at, $30, there's not much holding it up. And that's why, this is a level to watch. If it loses that, I don't think that's too greedy to wait out for $18. Manta's a new one. I can't remember, someone in the chat asked me to look at Manta. Long story short, because we don't have much time, I kind of like it. It's very new. I think it's got some good tokenomics, it's got some good prospects within there. I will try and research it more and explain more. So this doesn't have any levels at the moment. It looks a bit skewed because obviously it had an airdrop launch that really pushed the price up. But I'm waiting for this to sell. I'm waiting for people to sell the airdrops. There is some unlocks at the end of March. I'm hoping that will push the price down. But I don't have any levels yet. Mina, I've covered that one. I've done a research video on that one again to target. So Chris, to answer your question, I'm still watching. We're in a downtrend at the moment. Everything's pointing in the right direction. I'm just waiting for my trigger. Naka Gaming. Actually, that jumped into there today. And you see, I kept my eye off that ball. I didn't see. But at 2 o'clock today, it entered my first buy zone. I didn't actually have any buys set for that one. So I might regret that. Oh, last time I'm in an R about. It's a bit like FET. It's an AI-based project. It uses agents. It can focus on specific tasks, and it can collate that information together. It's quite an interesting one. PIF is another good one. This was another airdrop. I'm just waiting for it to cool off a little bit. It has run away, but it's starting to lose that. I'd like to think. Now, I got greedy here. I had my buy zone. I even had the buys if it drops over it. I watched it under it. Thought it was going lower. I was trying to get below 20 cents. Didn't get there. RLB is like a gaming one. This is in the buy zone, but I really want this one low because I think at the moment this is only available via DEXs on the Ethereum network. I'm worried about gas fees. Thea, I think, is another great one. Sorry, PIF, I should say, is oracles. And because I got out of Chainlink, that's why I'm really interested in this one. I think this could do really well as a competitor to oracles. Yep, so just waiting there. But this one's got the 50 EMA to contend with at the moment, so we may see a bounce. It's got a lot of good narratives about this at the moment. And then Celestia, again, had strong, it's got an airdropping community, all that kind of stuff. So, battling with the 50 EMA, I haven't set any levels for this because I'm not really sure where I'm going to, and I may just never be able to get into it. But it is that. So that's all I'm doing, Chris. I posted all of these in Discord, so you should be able to, adapt to yourself. And that's that. Okay, I'm conscious of where the time is, so let's just quickly move on. Not those. But I can't go over too many because it's already 1:45. I'm sure you guys are all a bit bored. But let's have a look at Polkadot. So a lot of people called this one. It was definitely a head and shoulders that had formed. We talked about that last week. There. Neckline. We've lost it. Come back down. It was a little Kobo, but not much. We're on the 200 at the moment, which is also a fairly decent level. We look at sort of other history. We've got level at the moment. This whole block here, this whole block here, this here. So I don't think this will hold. I'll be honest. I don't think the 50 is going to hold it either. But there is a potential that it turns around here. However, I think we're going to get back down to 5 cents. Sorry, $5. And if it got to 5 cents, I would be both screwed and also delighted. But anyway, yeah. So I think that one's coming there. Tau. Someone asked about Tau and it giving 0 Fs. Right, it has, and it's given me so many opportunities to buy back in, and I haven't because I just think it's going to fall. Now, see, we've had that correction come back up. I mean, it's on the 3 days. Put it on the daily. Just It's just battling with that 50, the 50, the 10, and the 20 are all together. It's confusing. It doesn't know what to do. It's up, it's down, but it's hanging around. And I'm just going to wait just in case this is just another whoop. And it's just a little one there. I mean, there's two. Drop it on the 4 hours. Potentially, we've got some sort of topping pan there and there at the moment. Although this one is going back up, so that might negate that pretty soon. But yeah. It's done remarkably well, surprisingly well. What I have noticed is a lot of people that I now follow on crypto Twitter, in their bios, they have Tau. And, you know, it's got a lot of stake already locked up. It doesn't have that many tokens, but it seems it is relatively well known. I can't decide if that's a good or a bad thing anymore. I think I preferred this when people didn't know about it so much. Still going to get back into it, but yeah, it's a great place and a great sector. I think it's going to do some amazing things. And maybe I am just being greedy, but I got out at the level it's at now. So I think if it gets back down to 216, I've got to bite the bullet and get some. I really want that 170, 150 though. ETH. We were going to talk about ETH. And I'm going to look at ETH BTC as well. But, you know, for a time, we had it respecting the 50 EMA far better than what a Bitcoin was doing. Because we had it ranging here and it allowed for price to catch up with it. And as I said, it had that lovely move up and everyone's talking about ETH just making some highs. But unfortunately, the waterfall has been far faster. And, you know, now, again, not only are we with the 50 EMA, we're actually below it. 2 hours ago, likely going to close below it. And we're actually at the base of this support here. So any further falling within the market may well bring this down. And when we start to add in, we have it here. ETH BTC. You have a look at the ETH BTC chart. What did that spike up really do? It just took it to the 800 EMA. It recovered 50% of this vector candle and then immediately rolled over. And, you know, so it hasn't made any higher highs on the, when you look at it, put it on the, take it off the daily maybe. I'm gonna lose my even on the 3-day. See if weekly. Okay, weekly. That helps. So with the weekly, it's come straight up to the 50 EMA and been rejected, as it has done many times in its downward trend recently. Okay, so we came all the way back down to the 10 this week and we're bouncing off that. But you know, the candles are looking, you know, that's pretty much a high test there after a rejection. And then a stonking one down here, 5 days still to go. So anything can happen. But we have recovered a decent proportion of this vector candle already. And I'd hazard a guess that we will probably look to do that again. Bitcoin dominance is back on the rise after a little cooling off period for the last couple of weeks. And so, yeah, you know, and that's the number 2 cryptocurrency, the number 1 altcoin. And it's still getting a bit of a kick in. I think we lost sight with that pump up in the ETF news, but it was soon battered back down. And you know, you have to go back to January 23, a year ago, where it spent more than a few weeks above the 50. And normally it touches over it and the next week it comes back down. So no surprise there. No surprise for me on that one. Anything else ready to look at? Casper, I know people always want to have a look at Casper, so let's have a look. Last one it'll be, guys. Let's get it on the daily. So this one has just range. It's consolidated for such a long period now that 50 is not only flatlined, it's actually started to taper off. And as I mentioned right back at the beginning, 2 hours ago, we're now getting it where the 10, the 20, and the 50 are fanning out. They're fanning out now, and we're starting to see that disconnect. The worrying thing at the moment is this level, whether or not you want to say it's 9, 9.2, 9.3, we really are starting to interact with that. Yeah, okay, we wicked down to it a couple of times before over the last couple of weeks, but now we're starting to see the bodies interact with that one there. And I don't think it's going to hold. I think the last line of defense for us is wherever this 200 EMA is going to end up, which at the moment is around about 8 cents. But if you then start to look at it from a fib point of view, we'll do the fibs and then we'll drop down to the other hours so we can see where the vector candles go. But we throw this one up there and there. Okay, so the 382 is pretty much where we're interacting at the moment at 9. Then at the 5 is at the 8, which is where the 200 is at the moment. And then what are we looking at? 618s. Yeah. James Dilly level, 6 cents or 7 cents. And that's why that's why I'm looking. I've got laddered buys all the way down from 8 to 7 to get back in. I say still got a bit of it, which I got at 10. A little bit underwater at the moment, but I want to try and get the rest of it back in on the way back down. And so I think it will. I think a lot of the models that Simons has done has kind of suggested that there's a couple of months of it drifting back down. Maybe start to see that retest. I think worst case he sees it is maybe down to 5.5 cents, which I appreciate the response he gave at the trading pub, and I think terminology used in terms of utility. I understand it's building some infrastructure for payment networks, and he talks about whether or not it's really been adopted. I'm kind of utilizing adoption and utility is the same thing. And I still stand by, whether or not it's success, for me, it still is a meme because it went viral, and you can tell that within the price, and it's cooled off. Not many people talk about it anymore, and Time doesn't talk about it that much anymore because the price isn't doing as exciting as what it does before. That to me is a classic meme coin. Now, it can get its utility, its adoption, whatever you want to call it, when it starts, if it gets picked up as a payment system. But people riding on the fact that 10 blocks per second is not enough for me. I've been nervous about it for many a months. Still got in with it because I think it could do some good things, and I think it does have a cult-like community to it, which will help drive it up, which again is another reason for a meme coin. But anyway, let's drop down, see if we can see any vectors that it may look to recover. Actually, you know what? This wick's taking them all out, really. So that's not that much use to us. And if I drop down any lower, it might not look so great. So, we don't really have too much there. But the 4 hour is, that all it's done for the last 3 or 4 days is just respect this 10, maybe the 20. So maybe we get a pullback again, back up to the 50, a bit like what we've had with Bitcoin. But I just see at the moment it's just going to follow the rest of the market. Right. Any more questions? I think you missed this. When you get to the charts, what do you think of Simon's view expressed today on his update that Tau would reach 6,400 24x? I didn't see his update, so I don't know. I am going to cover my view on potential growth at the cuddle. So I don't want to say anything too much now. I don't know how he's come up with 6,400, so I can't comment necessarily on that. I'll watch it a little bit later and then maybe provide my 2 cents either at the trading pub on Thursday or at the next event. But the cuddle's only 2 weeks away, and I'm going to do quite a few of those. I'm going to express sort of my view on what I think some people's predictions are not quite right, how I would maybe look at a more tempered view on how you could do this. A lot of details going to go into this one here. There's a lot of work going on behind the scenes, which you'll have access to once I've done it all. But I'm going to leave it at that. All right, let's just go full screen. I just want to say, look, it's ran longer than I'd hoped. I was hoping for an hour and a half, but there was a lot to get through there. So apologies for dragging it out as long as it did. Again, thank you everybody who turned up and listened to me waffle on for this long. For those of you who are watching it back, I hope you enjoyed as well. As I mentioned, Cuddle's in a couple of weeks. I am heading to this one. I won't be at the one after that. Not that's a reason for you not to attend. But yeah, other commitments. I can't make that next one. So hoping this one's going to be a good one. Only doing one talk, hopefully this time. Yeah, hopefully it's a bit different. It's not me sitting up there preaching. I'm going to try and get some participation within that. So I'll be picking on the ones that are hiding. But yeah, no, thanks again, everybody. If you've got any questions, obviously, as always, I'm there in Discord or any of the next lives. And other than that, thanks a lot. And yeah, let's see how this week pans out. Cheers, everybody. I'll speak to you all soon.